Today, in this video, I'm going to be making my very own holy trinity of watches across 3 different price points. You have affordable, you have mid-tier, and you also have the I can dream category because we can all dream. Right, so first up, what actually is the holy trinity of watches? The holy trinity of watches is made up of 3 different brands. You have Patek Philippe, you have AP or Audemars Piguet, and arguably the best one is Vacheron Constantin. Now, to get any of these watches from any of these brands is the ultimate flex for a watch collector. It is the end game for most of us in this watch industry because all 3 of these brands are just incredible. But equally, my holy trinity of watches in each price bracket are just as incredible. So first up, we have the affordable holy trinity of watches. And at number 1, we just had to put this. It's Casio. Casio has a nostalgic place in all of our hearts because Casio is the brand that 99% of us in the watch industry begin with. It is the brand you wore in school, you wore at university, you wore as a kid. It gives you nostalgia. It just is a pinnacle pillar of the entire watch industry. Casio was actually founded in 1946, and interestingly enough, in April of 1946, they invented a ring so that you could smoke cigarettes down to the nub. I kid you not, that is true. Here's a picture right now. Casio have just been involved in so many different products and also inventions. I mean, they were involved in mobile phones, calculators, of course, computers, typewriters, and then you get to watches, creating affordable watches that last a lifetime. Specifically, we could talk about this one. This is the Casio F91W. It comes in for under £10 and it's just brilliant. I had one of these bad boys for like 4 or 5 years and it still works. And in 1983, Casio introduced the G-Shock line, and this is a line of the most durable, shock-resistant watches that they could think of. Next on the affordable holy trinity, we have another banging brand that I feel is a pillar of the watch industry again, with tons of history, tons of innovation, and pretty awesome designs in Seiko. Seiko's history began in 1881 when Kentaro Hattori opened a clock shop in Tokyo, but it wasn't until 1924 that the Seiko name first appeared on watches. Grand Seiko then came into the mix in about 1960. Grand Seiko is just the bigger, I don't want to say the bigger brother, because arguably Seiko is bigger, but it's the more expensive, more refined, higher quality version of Seiko, and they've called it Grand Seiko. Now, one of the reasons that I've included this watch brand is there was a key moment in history that a lot of us buffs might get upset about. Seiko was actually the first brand to release a quartz model. And we all know about the quartz crisis. We all know that it almost killed our beloved automatic watches, but you can't deny that that is a pretty awesome moment in, well, not an awesome moment in time, a pretty key moment in time for the watch industry. And I feel like as a Holy Trinity member, you need to have tons of history. And this brand, Seiko, does have tons of history. This quartz wristwatch was introduced in 1969 in the Quartz Astron model, which is this model here. They also created the first ever GPS solar wristwatch, and they were involved in the Tokyo Olympic Games in 1964 as the official timekeeper, which is something that not many people know. There is just a ton of history when it comes to Seiko, and a ton of respect, I think, amongst watch enthusiasts and collectors. It definitely has to be a part of the affordable trinity of watches. Next up on the trinity of watches, we have technically it's American based on heritage, but now it's kind of Swiss because it's owned by Swatch Group. This is Hamilton. Now, Hamilton was founded in Lancaster, Pennsylvania in 1892, and it began by producing pocket watches. Now, in terms of serving the military, I don't think there's a brand that has done more than Hamilton, and I might get killed in the comments for saying that because maybe I am aware of another one. But from what I can see and from what I've studied and researched, Hamilton seems to be the brand that just dominated the kind of military watch stuff. In 1942, due to the Second World War, Hamilton stopped producing watches for consumers to focus on the task of supplying the US Armed Forces during this time. Between 1942 and 1945, over that 3-year cycle, Hamilton produced over 1 million timepieces, including wristwatches and marine chronometers. And it was actually awarded the Army Navy E Award for Excellence in Manufacturing. Now, since then, going back to the roots, the Hamilton khaki field has become the staple of Hamilton. In my opinion, the staple of Hamilton. It is the watch that you think of when you think of Hamilton. You think of durability, you think of ruggedness, you think of toughness, you think of what it can do that other watches simply can't, based on the history. And I think this cements it, solidifies it as one of the staples of the watch industry for me. It is affordable. I mean, a Hamilton khaki field mechanical comes in at around about £600, and it's a bloody brilliant watch. I personally have one, and my personal favorite at the moment, Hamilton-wise, is the Hamilton khaki field Expedition. It's just unreal. Right, moving straight on to mid-tier, and the first brand we have is, of course, Omega. To captivate legendary status, I feel like you need to be involved in something that will outlive everybody, that is eternal. And I think landing on the moon was one of those moments. Omega, the Omega Speedmaster in particular, landed on the moon with that lunar mission. And since then, it has been stapled to watch collectors' minds as the brand that they need to add to their watch collection, the Speedmaster in particular. But not only is there a huge amount of history with the Speedmaster, Omega have kind of cemented their place in the eyes of spy fans across the globe with James Bond, by being a part of that James Bond brilliant franchise. They were featured in pretty much every James Bond movie, and I feel like everybody that has an association or affiliation or likes James Bond and has a nostalgic connection to that automatically loves Omega. And by the way, guys, I just need to say, it's no small task for Omega to sponsor these things. It costs millions upon millions upon millions upon millions. And to be doing that consistently over years has cemented them in my eyes as one of the key pillars of the watch industry at that price point. And I do believe that they would belong in the holy trinity of mid-tier watches. They just have so much history, so much brilliant marketing, and also Kosk and Metas certified Seamasters, manual wound, beautiful movements when it comes to the 321 caliber and the Speedmaster. It's just unreal. You can see that I definitely got very passionate there because I'm wearing the king today, because the king is, is the king. But what are you guys wearing on your wrist today? Also, let me know in the comments before I move on if you guys agree with these Holy Trinity options or if I'm barking up the wrong tree. Sometimes I do, but that's okay. So let me know in the comments what you think. Thank you guys so much for watching. Hit that subscribe button. It would be much appreciated. Next on the list in the mid-tier Holy Trinity, we have Tudor. Now, Tudor to me is the best possible watch you could buy for the price. The price is pretty damn good for what you get. The quality is unmatched, and the styling, it's insane. Tudor was founded back in 1926 when Hans Wilsdorf also founded Rolex, and he also registered the brand Tudor. Tudor was originally essentially built for a more affordable alternative to Rolex. And interestingly enough, it's actually quite a recent thing that Tudor has rocketed into fame. I'm going to say over the last 15 to 20 years is when we really saw big strides from Tudor. But before that, it was a very small brand. Not many people knew about Tudor. It was dominated by Rolex. But now, I feel like Tudor acts as its own brand, its own standalone brand to Rolex. It does more fun designs, more bold designs than its big brother of Rolex, and I think that's partially why I resonate with it. But more importantly on that front is the quality aspect when you buy a Tudor. If you're buying a Tudor, you might pay around about £4,000, and for that, you get so much for your money. A Kosk and Metas certified movement in-house is one aspect of that, because you can't find that anywhere else for that price. You then get brilliant designs that have been inspired partially from Rolex's catalog, but tweaked enough to have the DNA and the originality of Tudor. And then you get the more bold colors that you just don't get from Rolex. And I do think that for this quality and for that price, you can't deny that they sit on the affordable mid-tier section of the Holy Trinity. And now we get to the third option in the mid-tier Holy Trinity category, which is Longines. Longines are a brand that have been doing it right and been doing it right for years. They've kind of flown below the radar in a lot of ways. They've kind of been the brand that everybody knows is awesome, but they kind of do their own thing a little bit. But over the last 3 years, with the Longines Hydra Conquest, the Longines Conquest GMT, and everything around that, Conquest Heritage is another one, they have exploded into the watch collectors' YouTube screen, if you want to call it that. Let's be relevant here, because they literally have. And the reason for that is because they are absolutely brilliant watches for a brilliant price. Now, Longines were actually founded in 1832 in Saint-Omer, Switzerland. So they have a huge amount of history, they have a huge back catalogue, and it's a brand that I want to push to the front of people's minds when they're thinking of watch collecting, because I do think they produce absolutely unbelievably awesome watches. Highlighted, in my opinion, by the Hydra Conquest GMT and maybe the Longines Conquest as well, or the Longines Heritage Diver. That's awesome as well. There's so many different facets of Longines, and I think they belong in the Trinity. But let me know what you think in the comments. I think they do. Right, and now we get to the I Can Dream category, the category of watches that are very expensive, the high tier category, we could say. The first watch on the Holy Trinity of I Can Dream watches is this, the JLC, specifically the Reverso. Now, when it comes to the Holy Trinity of watches, the high-end Holy Trinity of watches, one thing that people like above all else is rarity. They like to be unique. They like to have things that other people just don't. And the fact that JLC release about 40 to 50,000 watches worldwide a year is unbelievable. That is super rare. And I'm just going to give an example. Rolex, often seen as a very rare brand, produce about 1.2 to 1.3 million watches a year. Not saying they're bad in any way. Rolex are fantastic. I would definitely get a Rolex one day. But it just shows that the difference here in terms of scarcity and rarity. Now, interestingly enough, the Reverso was actually created to withstand big hits and kind of wear and tear while playing polo. It was essentially invented for rich people back in the day that played polo. And what they would do is flip the watch to the metal side so that the actual face of the watch didn't get damaged. And the rest was literally history. They've created one of the classiest, brilliant watches in the world by accident for a game of polo. And it's so unique and it's just so JLC. So I definitely think Jaeger-LeCoultre Ultra, or specifically the Reverso, would feed in to this legendary category of Holy Trinity watches, because I do think it is, in itself, a legend. Next on the I Can Dream level of Holy Trinity watches, we have a Langenzoner, a brand that really shocked me this year by bringing out an Odysseus in honey gold that this thing's crazy. The brand was founded in Glashütte in 1845 by Ferdinand Adolf Lang, and he strongly believed that Germany should have the same fine watchmaking centers to compete with the Swiss industry, which was at that point beginning to they're fully dominant now, but they were beginning to dominate. Now, A. Langenzoon is a very German brand. You have those big, bold numerals, those big, bold markers, and also it's very stripped down and simplified. And I really like it. It's kind of like the Apple of the watch industry, a very expensive Apple of the watch industry. Now, A. Langenzoon do a couple of things that I think give it legendary Trinity status. One of which is they produce about 4,000 to 5,000 watches a year. That's it. Worldwide. Like, no wonder people can't buy these watches, because there's just not enough of them produced. To top that off, they slow everything down. They slow all their production down by doing what they call the twice as better model. Essentially, they'll hand build a beautiful watch and then strip it all down and hand build it all again. Why? Because they believe that twice is better. They believe by stripping it down and building it up, they'll have less mistakes. They'll have a better quality product at the end. And it just shows the craftsmanship that goes into each and every one of A. Langenzonner's watches. Now, the Odysseus is the obvious option when it comes to A. Langenzonner, because it's the Odysseus, it's their hype watch. But there is so many other models that are absolutely phenomenal. And they're all equally as brilliantly built. So I do think that it deserves the legendary status. A. Langenzoon just deserves it, and it's earned it. Next on the list of expensive Holy Trinity watches, we have a weird one. This is Parmigiani Fleurier, a brand with tons of history that nobody seems to talk about. And potentially the reason that not many people talk about them is because they can't get hold of them. And the reason that they can't get hold of them is because they only produce 3,000 watches a year. Now, my personal favorite Parmigiani Fleurier has to be the Tonda. I think that's probably the hype model. If I'm totally honest, I'm maybe feeding into that. But there's just so much history that goes into the Parmigiani brand and so much excellent craftsmanship and watchmaking. Now, interestingly enough, you can actually see Parmigiani being worn on Prince Charles's wrist, which is, for us UK people, it's quite interesting. I spotted it and I was like, wow, Chisholm Hunter actually have Parmigiani Fleurier, so if you want to shop Parmigiani, then make sure you head to chisholmhunter.co.uk. I just feel like, without boring you guys, Parmigiani is the watch that only watch collectors will recognize. It's a conversation starter that only will attract a certain caliber of people that know about watches in the first place. And I think that is a really nice place to be. And although Parmigiani's history isn't as extensive as some of the other brands, I do feel it will be a staple in the industry based on what they're doing now. Because Parmigiani wasn't officially technically created until 1996. Now, the roots go way back from that, but technically speaking, 1996 is when they were officially created. And that is my own holy trinity of watches. Let me know what you think in the comments. Let me know if I'm wrong in my options here. And thank you guys so much for watching. If you did enjoy, please hit that subscribe button to support the channel. I'd really appreciate it. Or follow our Instagram at Chisholm Hunter, or my Instagram at HP Lifelens, or our podcast, the Into the Mind podcast. And I'll see you guys real soon.